Heath, who is the biggest winner? I'm going to pause. I'm going to give you like 3 seconds to think about it. Heath Cummings is here. Follow him at Heath Cummings SR.
I think it's a combo of the two guys that I'm going to steal one of Dave's winners and one of my winners. It's the New York Jets football catchers. Anybody who plays, and there we had this quote, like it was an ominous quote, I believe from Zach Wilson's first week of real practice, and I believe it came from Garrett Wilson, and he was talking about how the other guys throw a more wide receiver friendly ball. about talking about Zach Wilson, and then after the game, their head coach, Mike White, made the easy look easy.
Yes.
They're all just so happy to have Mike White playing quarterback, and I think we should be really careful about getting too excited about Mike White, and we should remember what happened in his second complete game of 2021. But it's an enormous upgrade over Zach Wilson, and I'm feeling Garrett Wilson was one of my believe it or not, so we can just throw it off the very top of the show. Elijah Moore is alive again. His teammates were chanting as he was being interviewed that E is free. They were all happy that they have somebody that was throwing the ball to him. Garrett Wilson is a top 20 wide receiver for as long as Zach Wilson is not the quarterback.
I think I have to believe it.
Oh,
top 20. You said top 20.
I did.
And I said I believe it.
I do these, like I always bump these up a little bit. I had top 25 and I knew everyone would believe it. So I made it top 20 and it still came in at like 80% believe it, but I'm sticking with it. I'm not listening to the public saying that's too obvious, because I think Adam probably disagrees.
I paid real close attention to this game. Here's the note that I wrote. Garrett Wilson is showing his talent for sure in spite of inferior quarterback play. Meaning that as long as he doesn't have a total dingleberry playing quarterback, he's going to be good. And Mike White, look, for this game, Mike White was great. I don't know if Mike White's going to be quite as good moving forward. Heath, you already mentioned what happened to Mike White last year. But if White stays or if Flacco takes over, as long as it's not Zach Wilson, I feel pretty good about Garrett Wilson because he's such a talented wide receiver. Good at getting open, good at breaking away from coverage. I wish he'd play the defenses like the Bears every week. He's going to have some tougher matchups, but he's just very talented. We've gone back and forth on him all year, I should say. I'm settling on him as a number 2.
Is Dingleberry FCC approved?
We're a podcast, so it doesn't matter. But as long as Dave doesn't say that on CBS network television, I think we're okay.
There's a reason why I'm not on CBS network television anymore.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe. I'm not really willing to go into Elijah Moore. He had 2 targets in this game. Yeah. And I just want to point out on Garrett Wilson, he had a 54-yard touchdown catch. I'm just telling everyone, I'm not dissing him, where Eddie Jackson, the Bears safety, got hurt on the play. It certainly would not have been a 54-yard touchdown catch if that didn't happen. He fell down, and that was the last.
Did Garrett Wilson break his ankles?
No, that's not what happened. You saw the play, right?
He was running a route, and the guy who was trying to cover him hurt his ankle and fell down.
Injury, and he wasn't trying to cover him. He was behind him. That's not what happened. But it's just top 20. We were just talking about Chris Olave being top 18 to 20. Juju's in that boat. So it's just there are a lot of guys that have. He's right there. I mean, he's got 3 close to 100-yard games in his last 4 games. 2 of them were with what's his stupid name? Zach Wilson. All right, let's go to our biggest loser. Dave, you want to give us the
D. Barry. His name is D. Barry.
D. Barry. You want to give us the biggest loser?
I think we're working on a loser case for Mike Evans, who's really been struggling the past couple of weeks. He got some deep targets. He was clearly involved. He had 9 targets in the game from Tom Brady, but another game, 2 for 31, just really, really terrible numbers for him. It makes me nervous to say, oh yeah, just keep starting Mike Evans. No worries. I don't know if we can necessarily do that anymore. I'm sure someone's about to ask me, Mike Evans or Garrett Wilson rest of the season. That's it's the fact that I'm hesitating tells you all that you need to know.
What do you think? I would go Evans.
He gets the Saints next week too.
Oh crap! Then I'm definitely going.
He's got the Saints next week. The Niners after that, and then the Bengals, Cardinals, Carolina. Look, I think he can right the ship and find the end zone.
The Cardinals will be bad for him too.
I think he can come through and be like 15 PPR points? Like, shouldn't he be 15 PPR points?
Believe
Just
it or not,
rolling
Garrett
out of
Wilson
bed
over
in the
Mike Evans
morning?
the rest of the season.
I think when you look at the schedules, it actually makes things a lot more interesting because you got the Vikings and then you got the Lions in 3 weeks for Wilson. I'm gonna take Evans, but it's interesting.
I think it's irresponsible to take Garrett Wilson over Mike Evans, but it's kind of fun to say Wilson over Evans.
But it's for sure Garrett Wilson this season in non-Zach Wilson games has been better per game than Mike Evans. Right?
That might be true now. I don't know if it was going into this week because he only had one good game with Joe Flacco.
I thought he scored.
He scored 2 touchdowns against the Browns, and that was it.
He had two the first 3 games. He had 12 points, he had 30 points, and he had 9 points.
Right.
So it's not like he had a bad game either. One bad game.
Well, 9's bad. 12 ain't great.
12 ain't great.
12, but Mike Evans would take a 12 right about now.
Right now he would, but before this 3 games, cold streak, he was on fire. But
he was. It's true.
The thing about Brady in this game is he tried so hard to hit the deep ball and he couldn't hit the deep ball. He had 2 or 3 deep shots to Evans and they just couldn't connect.
Right.
And instead of going into the game, he was tied and now he's behind him. He was tied going into the game with Chris Godwin in green zone targets. And that's incredible to think when you think about Evans in the role, so reliable when they get near the end zone. That is gone this year.
Is there anybody else that's happened to this year?
Right. Who are you talking about?
Adam Thielen.
Oh, okay.
It's the same thing.
Dave, we already talked about Garrett Wilson. Who are your other winners? Oh, we talked about Zay Jones. He's one of your winners too. So
I'm down to one winner.
Rashad
White for Tampa Bay. 14 carries, 64 yards, 9 catches, 45 yards. As long as Leonard Fournette stays away, Rashad White is a must-start number 2 fantasy running back in PPR, and he's pretty close to that exact same thing in non-PPR as well. I thought he looked pretty good, all things considered, first half more so than the second half. And I still feel like Tampa Bay either wants to or kind of needs to get a run game going so that they're not leaning too much on Tom Brady.
So what happens when Fournette comes back? Because it's easy to start Rashad White when Fournette's not there, but when Fournette comes back, what is Rashad White?
I think he'll be in the mix and as a flex and maybe a low-end number 2 running back. Because I think until Fournette can prove it again, I think Rashad White's the better running back in Tampa Bay.
The key here that I would say, and the good thing for him, is they trusted him in the passing game, and he delivered for the most part. I mean, the efficiency was still terrible on a per-catch basis, but he caught 9 passes. He was efficient as a rusher. He's been so much better since Fournette got hurt than he was when Fournette was healthy. And so he's not giving them a reason to go back to Lenny.
I mean, I think I do need to point out that in the second half, he had 7 carries and he only had 11 yards. So I mentioned that first half, he got going, in the second half, slowed down a little bit. But I think that he's going to – look, they could have had Giovanni Bernard back in action. They didn't use him. Keyshawn Vaughn barely played. I think they want White to be the guy.
Well, as we go into Sunday night, Rashad White is currently in full PPR. In non-decimal scoring, he's tied with 3 other running backs as RB5. So he's anywhere from RB5 to RB8 right now going into Sunday Night Football with those 9 catches. That's a big deal for him. Tied with Jermichael Hasty, who had a touchdown catch, and Nick Chubb and Ramondre Stevenson. So great game for him. Started in 65% of leagues. Heath, let's go to your winners. You had Elijah Moore. You also have DK Metcalf and Brian Robinson. Robinson was only started in 23% of leagues. Metcalf, on the other hand, was started in 88% of leagues and had arguably he had one of his best games for sure. So what do you have to say about Metcalf and Robinson?
Yeah, pretty sure it was his second best game of the season. The second time this year, he's got to 20 fantasy points. He finished with exactly 20 fantasy points, right?
Yes.
11 for 90 on 15 targets. The second time this year a player has had 15 targets and not reached 100 yards or scored a touchdown. Can you tell me who the other one was?
Deontay Johnson.
No, it was not. It was Mike Evans. But no, I thought their intention, obvious intention of getting him more involved, trying to get him going after what's been a pretty dry stretch, is a good sign for the rest of the season. Now, I still think they should throw it to Tyler Lockett more. But it's a very positive sign for him that they were this intent on getting him involved in the offense.
9 targets in 3 of the past 4 games for DK Metcalf. That's a plus. We haven't seen Lockett get 9 targets since week 3. The one thing that's keeping Lockett afloat is that he's scoring every single week. 4 straight games with a touchdown for him, 3 of them from 20-plus yards out.
I mean, we could dissect it all we want, but these guys get started by almost everyone every week. Not to say that you shouldn't have brought it up, but it was nice to see more than 40 yards from Metcalf. But fantasy managers have basically just said, I'm starting Metcalf and Lockett every week. And if for the most part, they've been rewarded for it.
That's a much easier decision to make against the Raiders than it is other teams as well.
It's true.
Like against at the Rams next week, you're probably still starting them, but
yes,
it's a tougher situation.
All right, well, let's go back to Garrett Wilson. Who would you rather have rest of season, Garrett Wilson or a Seahawks receiver?
You're promising me no more Zach Wilson, correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I think I'd go Garrett Wilson first.
Dave?
In full PPR, you make the case because you figure that he'll catch the most passes from game to game and he can do the most with it yardage-wise. If trading were still happening, I'm positive that Lockett would still go for more than Garrett Wilson. I'd probably say this still sound crazy and it could change in a week. Lockett, Wilson, Metcalf, but all very close together.
Brian Robinson, 90% rostered, but only 23% started. I mean, you just don't expect him to catch a touchdown. 18 carries, 105 yards, 2 catches, 20 yards, and a touchdown against the Falcons. Great day for him. Do you buy it? Do you believe in Brian Robinson going forward?
The reason he's a winner is because it was just 7 days ago, almost to the minute, when we were discussing about how Antonio Gibson just had his first game since Robinson became active with more carries than Robinson. And we all thought, based on their efficiency this season, that was likely to be the case moving forward, that Antonio Gibson would get more carries than Brian Robinson. In this game, Robinson had 18 to Gibson's 9. And was far more efficient, looked better as a runner. I don't know that I necessarily buy it, but I feel better about him as a high-end flex next week than I did coming into this week.
Next week is at the Giants, then a bye, and then the Giants again. We've seen time and time again, the Giants can't stop the run.
Did Gibson get hurt and come back? Because he only played 39% of the snaps, and that's low for him.
I wasn't aware of it, but it's certainly possible. Let's go to our losers. Heath, your losers are Alvin Kamara, Gerald Everett, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. This is a fun list here. Kamara has now gone, 4 straight games with pretty disappointing performances here, and this one was really bad with the 2 fumbles. So what do you think about Kamara at Tampa Bay and then a bye in his next 2 games?
I'd be pretty happy if I had 2 other running backs I could start, honestly. He's a low-end number 2 running back. I had him ranked 19th this week in a difficult matchup against the 49ers. That's in full PPR. In half PPR, he was barely inside the top 24. And non-PPR, he was barely inside the top 24. I think he probably catches enough passes, but the efficiency's been awful for 6 weeks now. And he's got 1 game all season where he's got into the end zone. This team is not going to get in the end zone that much. And the Tampa Bay run defense looks pretty fantastic.
Right.
If you're not Nick Chubb. And he's not Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
What I really hate is thinking that there's somebody out there whose dynasty season where they were contending is starting to crumble, and they're looking at Alvin Kamara on their dynasty roster, and I don't know. I mean, you couldn't get a first-round pick for him right now. I don't know that there's any reason to expect that he has another top 12 season left.
Well, what about the fact that before this 4-game stretch, he had 3 straight games with 105 or more total yards, 6 to 7 catches in each game, 17 and a half or more PPR fantasy points in each game. He's only a month removed from being looking like an absolute stud, Alvin Kamara of old. What do you make of that? I remember Josh Jacobs had a 2-game slippage. This is a 4-game slippage, so it's worse. But what do you think?
Right. I mean, it's a 4-game slippage, and it's not like before this he was Josh Jacobs. He was piecemealing his way to really good low-end RB1 production. I don't want to say that he wasn't, but I just there's some reason to have hope, I guess, in week 15 that he starts looking like Alvin Kamara, but I'm not going to be excited to play him against Tampa Bay next week, and then he has a bye.
No. Right. But it's trade deadlines have passed. You're probably just going to have to hang on to Kamara. You lower expectations for week 13. You find a running back to replace him in week 14. He's got the Falcons and then the Browns in weeks 15 and 16. Hopefully the guy you drafted comes back to being that guy for the fantasy playoffs.
Kudos to you if you found some way to where you're going to be in the playoffs at that point anyway.
Well, yeah, you
can do that.
Certainly,
there are people that have Kamara.
The one team I have Kamara, I went into the week 7-4, so I have no idea how I'm doing, but probably not that well. That's I think a mix-in Kamara team, but Gerald Everett is another loser of yours, and he was started. I mean, like, come on. When are we ever going to be able to trust Gerald Everett at this point?
No.
Is it done? Drop him?
Well, except it's the Raiders next week. So it's
not better than the Cardinals.
It's exactly what we said about Foster Moreau at this time last week was, well, but he gets Seattle next week, and then he scored the late touchdown to save his day. Everett's he's probably going to score another 2 touchdowns this season. And so those weeks he'll be serviceable, but the targets just basically disappeared. I don't know how many points he ended up with. I know he got the 2-point conversion, so that gave you a little something.
That gave you 7.8 PPR fantasy points.
He might have been a top 12 tight end this week.
Donovan Peoples-Jones was started in 31% of leagues, rostered in 76% of leagues, had his first bad game in a while. What do you, is he going to be better or worse with Deshaun Watson next week?
I think he'll be better, but this was something that kind of hit me in the middle of this week. And I didn't really talk about it, but how many times have we seen Amari Cooper, David Njoku, and Donovan Peoples-Jones all involved?
All involved.
Like we've seen.
We're talking 6 targets each.
Peoples-Jones has had a really nice stretch when Njoku's not done much the last month. And there were a couple weeks before that where I think maybe they were both okay. But like weeks 8 through 11, Njoku was nothing. And that's pretty close to Peoples-Jones' best stretch of the season.
Yeah, there's been one game this year where all 3 have had at least 6 targets. Pretty rare.
And so I'm a little concerned that Cooper's the 1, Njoku's the 2 when they're both good, and Peoples-Jones the 3.
Except in a road game. Then Cooper's the 3.
Well, that's a good point.
No, it's a good point. I felt like there was a clunker coming from Donovan Peoples-Jones,
I mean, we almost had it last week.
Yeah.
We got lucky at the end of last week. I originally had Peoples-Jones on my loser list too. I took him off just because A, Deshaun Watson's coming back next week. B, they play Houston next week. And there's going to be he's going to be a really good bye week replacement wide receiver.
Man, are we happy that they play Houston next week for the passing game?
I don't think we should be elated, but I think I think Peoples-Jones can get you back to 10 to 12 people.
I just think of the Cleveland Browns offense, their offensive philosophy, and the fact that they have maybe the most talented running back in football on their team, and what the Texans have allowed this year to running games versus passing games.
You'll be nuts not to rank Nick Chubb in your top 1.
It's so funny when we previewed the Dolphins-Browns game, I was saying, Dolphins-Texans game, I was saying, we love Tua, but this team, they don't give up a lot of points to quarterbacks. They never do, or receivers really. And by no accomplishment of their own, they gave up only 19 fantasy points to Tua Tagovailoa and pretty modest games to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. The Texans
and Jeff Wilson.
I was really concerned that Tua was hurt.
He took some hits.
Yeah,
because when they pulled him because the game wasn't close, and then Houston got it back to within 2 scores with like 6 minutes to go, and they didn't put him back in.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he may have been a little beat up. All right, Dave's losers are Mike Evans, we talked about, and then we got Tyler Boyd and Cordarrelle Patterson. Can we drop Tyler Boyd, and what do we do with Patterson? I'm not going to drop him, but talk to me about Boyd and Patterson.
You can drop Boyd. It sounds like Jamar Chase is going to be back next week. When are you going to feel confident to use Tyler Boyd? When it's 2 straight games now where there's been a huge opportunity for him to put up huge numbers. Actually, it's more than 2. It's
4 straight games.
How long was he out? Because he went in to be checked for a concussion.
He did take a hit. He did come back in soon after. I don't think he missed much time.
I just saw him going to the blue tent.
In the 4 games he played without Jamar Chase, he maxed out at 12 PPR points.
Yeah.
He was under 10 PPR points in the other 3 games.
So disappointing. I'd drop him. I mean,
you can. I think he's droppable. It wouldn't surprise me if he had another 100-yard game somewhere along the way. He had 100 yards against the Jets. He had 100 yards, 150 yards against Atlanta. He scored in those games. It wouldn't surprise me if he had another one of those games before the season ended, where Cincinnati's just got a laugher of a matchup and Joe Burrow goes berserk. Maybe that's what happens 2 games from now for them against Cleveland. But
you know where he's going to be when that happens, Dave?
Where's he going to be?
On your bench. No one's starting him.
Right.
But what about Patterson? He was only started in 36% of leagues and fairly close to a touchdown. But what do you think?
He was, and he played the most of any Atlanta running back. He played 58% of the snaps, all 5 of their snaps inside the 10. But he's not going to be that featured guy for them. He's going to be sharing game after game, and I can't call him a must-start number 2 running back moving forward. I think he's going to be on the fence of a low-end number 2, high-end number 3 flex range type of player.